Now let's talk exactly about making the marketing materials themselves and your Steam store page. First of all, before a whole bunch of other stuff, you want to make sure you have clear and exact selling points of your game and keep in mind all of your branding information that you've already established. So things like numbers are really, really good for the clear and exact selling points. Things like the number of playtime hours your game has, or the number of choices, or my personal favorite, the number of endings your game has. Sometimes your visual novel is just a kinetic visual novel and there's only one ending and no choices. That's perfectly fine too. Just let them know it's a kinetic visual novel. The number of CGs your visual novel will have. The number of characters maybe. Does your game have sex scenes? How many of those are there? Stuff like this is all stuff that you can include with your selling points. Try not to be vague with them. So if you write something like, this is a unique story about love and passion, okay, great, but that didn't really tell me anything different than another romance visual novel. What's the other romance visual novel told me it had 40 hours of playtime. You haven't told me. Well, how many hours of playtime do you have? Maybe you only have 20, but maybe you cost more than the other one. Why would I want to get you compared to that? I don't know what you actually have in you. So, that kind of stuff is why people want to see some numbers, and they don't want you to be too vague with it. Just let them know everything. Let them know it all out front. And then using those numbers and your branding, you're going to create descriptions, you're going to create graphics, and you're going to make the trailer. And you're going to use all the selling points and utilize your branding as best as you can. Now, for this step with the descriptions and graphics and trailers, I highly, highly, highly recommend, if you don't know graphic design, hire a graphic designer. It will benefit you a ton. You are going to need a lot of it to properly market your game and make it looking really, really, really good. So we're going to go over the graphics section now, and there's a few really important things with the graphics, which is why it's very, very crucial that you have a graphic designer, because a lot of time you're going to need them. So let's cover the graphics section now. First of all, reminder, focus on your branding with this. If you've established it properly, this should all come pretty straightforward and go really, really well. Logo and box art. This is what they're going to see before they even click on the game to read more about it. Maybe before they even see the price tag. So if it doesn't interest them, a lot of the time they're not even going to click it. No matter how much it costs, they're not going to click it. Do really, really well with this. Usually this includes having a face with visual novels. Put a face on there so you have it like a human connection or a connection with the reader in general. Don't come up with the logo and box art afterwards. Don't come up with any of these graphics towards the end. It'll definitely show if you just kind of rush out graphic assets just to fill out a Steam store page. It'll definitely show if you just rush this towards the end and don't think about it and don't properly plan it out. Things like just having a face on your visual novel. You can't have a story without characters. So it's very, very good to actually see a face. Like if I just see a logo that says your title and I don't even see another character in there or an interesting background, I'm not going to know what's going on. Let's say you have a visual novel and your logo is just our story and there's no other image with it. It's just the logo that says our story, but it's not really stylized in any kind of fancy way that gives me a vibe of it being like a romance or something. I don't know. What is your story exactly? Is it like a crime thing? Is it a sad drama? Is it a happy romance? I have no idea because you haven't told me anything else yet and you haven't given me the impression that it is anything else yet. So how am I supposed to know? Now, how you can improve it, give it like a little cursive kind of font, a nice sunset background, and put a smiling anime girl on there maybe. Then it tells you more that it might be a romance story of some kind. Or maybe it's a smiling anime boy. Like, if it's a smiling anime girl, I'm gonna know, hey, there's anime girls inside. I might click on it if I'm interested in those. But if your target audience is anime boys, then they probably won't click on it because they want to see a smiling anime boy, and you should put a smiling anime boy on the cover. Or if you're doing a game about animals, you want to put that animal on the cover. These are the important things that you want to keep in mind, so you know, hey, my audience is into this. I should make sure this thing that I'm targeting this product to be is actually on the cover. So if you're selling a game that's a romance, probably have one of the romance interests on the screen, maybe both of them. It depends on the project. So another graphic that you could use for your marketing, character sheets. Big things. They are not only useful in production for like reference sheets and stuff like that, they can also be really, really good for promoting your game. If you post stuff like that onto Twitter or Patreon, it helps to generate hype for it. And sometimes fans that are really, really interested in the project might take the character sheets and make fan art for the game. Now they're promoting your game too, and you didn't even have to pay them anything. Stuff like that, all it can serve to do is help you. Don't try to get worried about, oh, I don't want to show it off yet. It might not be the finalized version of it. Oh, I don't know. I don't want to spoil this character in this yet. Maybe I want to wait for all of the sprites to be done first. Don't worry about that, okay? The main thing you're supposed to be constantly doing is keeping people reminded that you exist and that you're a project and that, hey, you're coming out soon, or hey, you're already out and you're doing improvements maybe. I don't know where your projects are at, but there's no real reason not to start telling people constantly about all of the cool new stuff that's going on with the project behind the scenes. Just go with it. Unless you have like an NDA with somebody for some reason, show them some stuff that's going on, like character sheets or drafts that are written up. All sorts of things can help. And this kind of goes into my next section of graphics we're going to talk about, infographics. So this can be stuff like converting your selling points into charts maybe, or nice little promotional graphics that help to say, hey, we have this many things going on in our game. You're also accomplishing promoting yourself and hyping yourselves up while telling them the selling points. So stuff like the descriptions of Steam, you can put in images in the longer description of Steam pages. You don't have to actually even type anything in these sections. I think you can just put in a bunch of images that say everything cool that you want to say in a more stylistic and interesting way. You can have images of the waifus in like the background, and then you'll have text above them that says 30 different endings, 50 plus hours you could play, 7 romance routes, you know, stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of stuff you could do to interest people. These kind of infographics, you can use them in Kickstarters as well to try to show people the data in more interesting ways. They want to see the numbers, but if you can show them in a way more interesting way than how other projects are doing it, why not? All it can serve is to help you and make you look really, really cool. Any kind of big announcements that you're making onto stuff like Twitter, you can usually make a really cool graphic to go along with it. And I got some really good examples of this I'm going to show you guys a little later. Any kind of really big updates that you have for your project, you can also include some kind of graphic to go with it. It doesn't have to just be a tweet saying, hey, we finished this many routes of the game. You can also say, hey, we finished this many routes of the game, and also include a custom image of promo art of the characters for your game with like party hats on and stuff and cheering and maybe holding a banner saying our game is this far done or whatever. Or even if it's just a regular CG that you've already shown, but with some banner on it that says we are this close to completing the game. Something like that can be really, really good at announcing something without just saying it and then walking away. You can say it and leave an impression and maybe get retweets or catch some eyes more. If somebody's scrolling on Twitter and they just see a text post saying, hey, we completed 50% of our game, scroll past it. But if they see, hey, we completed 50% of our game, and see a really, really cool CG underneath it, because that's where their eyes are going to go to first. They're going to go to the CG image that they see, and they're going to be like, oh, wow, that looks like really good art or something. Or, oh, wow, that looks like a happy little game. What's this? Oh, they're 50% of the way done with the project. I want to check into this project. And now you found another person that might be interested in your project. Now for the Steam store page assets, I talked a lot about it in my previous video. You can check that out if you want. For the most part, you just want to focus on using quality materials for this that are all on brand. You need to make sure it keeps on your game's brand and all looks really, really nice, presentable. Do not get lazy with this part at all. Don't, because this is your store page. When they're looking through the bin of visual novels and you've convinced them with the logo and box art to click on your game, they're gonna start reading the descriptions and checking out the trailer and checking out the screenshots you posted and checking out the other media you have on the page. And if you've really only done like a trailer, a couple of screenshots, and the box art, and it all feels like it's rushed so that you can get the store page up, they're gonna walk away. They're not gonna bother. Why would they? Why would they try to give your game a chance? They haven't even looked at the price yet, and most of the time they will walk away. Why would they even bother no matter what price it is? If it doesn't interest them at all, they usually won't consider it. And this gets into the next most important, in my opinion, part of the Steam store page, especially for visual novels: trailers. This is a very, very important section, okay? This is a very, very important section. First major point: have more than just gameplay. So again, I talked about this a little bit in my last video, but one of the most important things that you need to understand with visual novels is that a lot of them don't have too much going on when you're playing it, because a lot of it is just you reading. So in your head, there's a lot going on because you're reading it and you're experiencing it. You're picturing the scene in your head along with the visuals that they're showing you. This isn't like an animated scene usually. This is you reading it and engaging with it a lot in your head. A lot of the times the developers will have just a gameplay trailer of the visual novel because Steam, you have to have your store page up for 2 weeks before you can actually sell it. And a lot of times they won't have a trailer ready yet. So they'll post just a couple of minutes of gameplay or maybe just the main screen, just so they have something there so that they can have their store page be up so people can see it sooner. But that's not good. In my opinion, that's a great way to get people to never consider looking at your game again. Because again, a lot of visual novel gameplay doesn't have too much going on the screen. And a lot of the visual novels we see on my Anime Night streams that do this, where they only post a gameplay trailer because they don't have an actual trailer ready, they tend to, a lot of the times, not even pick great scenes to show off for this. I don't know what your situation is, but if you have to only release it with a gameplay trailer for now, try to make it at least an interesting scene or cut it into different parts of scenes so that as a whole it's interesting. What you absolutely don't want is customers just looking at visual novel gameplay where they're staring at a background and the main character is narrating and there's nothing else going on. There's no voice acting. Sometimes there's not even any music and there's no characters on screen. It's just a background and just narration. Nothing is going on. You're not being told a lot about the game. You're just being told shut up and read. You don't need to actually know if you're interested in it first. You're just going to read it now. And a lot of people aren't going to bother doing that. It feels like you're giving them work. They shouldn't have to do work to be convinced to buy your game. You should be the ones putting in the effort to convince them to buy the game. If they have to do any work to be convinced to buy the game themselves, it's not going to work out for you if you just say, hey, shut up, consume, and buy. You need to give them something else. Show characters on the screen. Have voices if you're gonna have voices playing. Have music playing definitely, if anything else. Show a scene with some really cool CG. Anything that you can to give them something more to look at, something more to engage with, something more to give them a feel for what your visual novel is. So I would actually say don't even bother showing your Steam store page until you have an actual trailer ready, because they are just gonna walk away and never come back if they have to watch a boring gameplay trailer, didn't even get to watch an actual trailer. If your project has to wait an extra 2 weeks to release the game because you wanted to have the extra time to prepare a trailer, I think you'll live. So in your actual visual novel trailer, make sure you're showcasing the character art, the voices, if you have any voices, the really cool CGs you have, and you can use interesting visual effects to give the overall tone of the game. Use all the fonts and color palettes and stuff you've decided on with your branding, incorporate that in the trailer to maximize the feel of what you're trying to go with. Stuff like music setting the tone and different sounds happening and different voices going on at certain times. Actual visual novel trailers are hugely important. You got them interested with the box art and logo enough to actually click it. Sometimes they haven't even looked at the price by then, even though they can, it's right next to it, but sometimes they haven't even looked at the price yet. So at this point, they've clicked on the trailer, they haven't looked at your description yet, and they've now loaded up your Steam store page, and a trailer is now playing. Imagine that they haven't looked at the description or the price or anything else at all. Imagine they haven't looked at that at all. They're only looking at the trailer, and imagine they only ever will look at the trailer at this point on, and use that information to tell them literally everything you can in a unique and interesting way. So you can include stuff like your selling points as like little side notes in the trailer. You can have voice acting of the characters talking about what the actual plot of the game is. Sometimes you can literally have the description of the game being read on the trailer, and that works fine too, so that they don't have to read it themselves, they get it read to them instead, which makes it a lot easier for them. This is, in my opinion, the make or break point. If the trailer doesn't interest them enough, they are not going to even bother look at the price. It could be a free game and they'll already have moved on. They won't have even bothered, because if your trailer doesn't interest them, why would they even bother going forward? You need to make sure you put a lot of time and a lot of effort into this trailer and make sure it is great, because this is the point of no return. At this point in the time, if you got them hooked from the trailer, more times than not, they will buy your game unless they just physically don't have the money to afford it. Then they might wishlist it and get it later when it's on sale. But usually now, these days, especially with Steam's refund policy, they will just try a game if it interests them at all and they have the money for it. The refund policy exactly is that they have 2 hours they get to play it and 2 weeks after they purchase it to play it. Once they purchase it, if they play it and find they're not interested, they can still refund it. But because they bought it, there is a chance that somebody who might have had doubts about wanting to get it will still keep it. This means that if they were interested at all in the game, from the trailer and they weren't dissuaded from it at all, they are more likely than not going to buy it strictly because it is very safe for them to get their money back. So a lot of the times they'll buy it, and if it turns out they really are interested in it, they'll keep it. They won't refund it and everything will be good. But if they are disinterested in the trailer, they're never going to even try it. Why would they? Even if you have a free demo, usually they're going to move on. They're not like me, somebody who looks at literally every visual novel that comes out every week and tries out nearly all of the free ones that come out and some of the really cheap ones. I do it because it's just something that interests me, and I do it on my live streams and we all talk about that kind of stuff. A lot of other people aren't going to bother doing that. A lot of people are only going to bother with the things that actually interest them, and if it doesn't interest them at all and it looks like the developer didn't even bother to try to interest them, they're just going to move on. If you as a developer didn't put in the time and effort for your marketing materials for the game, the players are going to know and they're just not going to bother buying it. Oh, one other important point about trailers that I want to mention. Music. Make sure the music is providing the tone of the game you're selling, but not putting people to sleep. So sometimes what visual novel developers will do is they will take a song from their soundtrack and put it in the trailer. That's all well and good. The problem is some of them will do that with a background song that's designed in a way so that the player can just focus on the text or the voices or the scene going on. So this means, yes, it will fit a visual novel scene, but it doesn't mean it's going to work well for a trailer. It might just make people feel very, very bored watching the trailer because they're seeing a whole bunch of cool flashy stuff going on, but the music is not at all selling that. The music is not at all hyping it up or giving the correct tone for what you're trying to go for with the kind of imagery that you're showing on the screen. So you have to make sure you account for that, because it's fine if you use a background track from your game in the trailer. Just make sure it's good for the trailer. Make sure it's really good at getting someone interested in the game to try it out. Alright, so let's take another look at some other example visual novels that have come out recently, and we can talk about some of the points that we've already gone over, and see how well some of them have done, and see how bad some of them have done. Let's start with Lou Game, which I've made a video about before reviewing. It's pretty good, but let's take a look at the actual trailer so you can get a feel for what I'm talking about. So you got a nice little visual zoom in effect going, and you have a nice intense not put you to sleep song going. You have some really great CGs. We're showing off the characters. Like, for the most part, all we're doing here is just showing off the really, really best CGs that are in the game in a very visually appealing way. So you get this overall tone with this trailer, right? You get this overall feel that this is Lou Game, Lunchtime Games Club. This is a romance slice of life about being in a game club at the school, and you're just hanging out with all of these waifus. And you get a whole bunch of videos here of blushing, smiling waifus, and very nice CGs of them, and you just get an overall feel in the whole trailer about it being a very welcoming, very fun-filled, friendly experience. This is a very, very good trailer overall. Let's look at this other trailer by them. Oh, this is a trailer for the free DLC. Look at this, they even did a whole new trailer just for free DLC that they added recently. They didn't just make an announcement post and then leave it at that. They did a whole, and look at this, even the box art now. I didn't even notice this before. The whole box art of it. Now, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that Lou Game has done really, really well, but we'll talk about that a little later. Let's move on to the next example. I don't want to talk bad about some of these games because I haven't actually played some of these games. I'm just looking at their store pages and the marketing materials and judging them based solely on that. I have no idea if these are good games. I have no idea if these are bad games. I did look at this at Anime Night, and I was interested in this for some other reasons that having to do with their numbers. But let's take a look at their trailer. This is Aloe and Cal. You have their box art is... it could have been something. This is silhouettes of the main characters, which, I mean, I guess tells you that there's characters, but like they're I don't know why these aren't just the characters. Why do they have to be the silhouettes of it, is the thing. This could have been vastly improved if you made them the actual characters. You can already tell just from a glance. This is a furry kind of slice of life. From when I looked at it more in depth on the animated streams, this is specifically you're hanging out with some furry characters and cooking every day and stuff like that. You cook something like 100 CGs worth of food or something. And okay, that's fine. We got that going on. But nobody, regular visual novel fans and furry visual novel fans, have no idea that this is either of those things. They don't know that this is a furry visual novel. How are you supposed to sell this to other furries if you're not showing them really? You're showing a silhouette. I mean, really, you could have just shown a face. That would have made this a lot better. Well, let's look at the actual trailer. This is one of the bad things I was talking about, where you don't want to make your trailer just the visual novel gameplay, because there's something really exciting going on. At least here, though, you're seeing a sprite, and the sprite's face has changed. But, you know, this is just looking at a background with the sprites and some non-distracting music, and you're being told just read it. I will give them some credit, though, in the actual text, because I've read it already on my animated stream. They talk about the selling points of their game here. This is something a lot of visual novels will do sometimes. They will have little gameplay things that are actually talking about what makes their visual novel unique, you know, breaking the fourth wall in that sense. And that could be a really interesting way to do it as well. Usually it makes it even better when there's actual voice acting. That's not to say that your game has to have voice acting. This is just me saying, because this is the only thing I have to go on. If I'm anybody that just checks out to see if there's something I'm interested in, at about here was when I'd leave. Because why would I bother with the rest of this? This is just going to be more of this. You can usually tell it's just going to be more of this. And there's nothing really about it that is going to appeal. I guess maybe if you're just into anything furry related, just seeing the furry sprite up front makes you want to keep going. But I don't know, man. There's no other trailer with it. But the screenshots, these are good though. These CGs that we have there, they're pretty decent. I'm always a fan of anybody that wants to do their own art. And I think from what I was reading, this is a one-person or self-funded game developed by one guy over like 5 years. So like, good on you, man. And I think he did a lot of work and made this like a 40+ hour story with like thousands of choices and 100 CGs. That's like pretty good. My only thing is that you now have this big hurdle where you've spent 5 years working on this, and now there's a chance that all those years are going to go to waste because you didn't really think marketing out and you didn't really do much to market yourself. Okay? Now, the $20 price tag can scare a lot of people, but if it really is 40 hours of content and it's thousands of dialogue choices and stuff, you know, these selling points are pretty good enough to convince a lot of visual novel readers to want to try it anyways. But you still have to convince them from the trailer part. Okay, so if it takes them until like here to actually say how much of the stuff is in it, you've already lost because they've already left at about here. You might think, oh, but they put some of it in the description. Again, like I've said before, assume they aren't going to read it. Assume they're just going to jump to the trailer, and if nothing interesting is going on for them, they're just going to leave. Because usually, that's going to happen. Now, there's some other things with this game that we're going to talk about as well with the Lou Game one, but we will go over that a little later during another section. For now, let's go to another visual novel. This is Memories on the Shoreline. Got a nice little beach setting, got some really cool visual effects going on, some nice tropical music going. This is a great trailer already from the start. We haven't even seen much, and we're looking at sprites and stuff, and now we got some nice fonts going on with cool color palettes. This is 100% doing really good. Like, this is a really great trailer for the kind of game it's trying to be. Now, maybe this kind of thing doesn't appeal to a lot of audiences, like it doesn't appeal to somebody that likes hardcore science adventure stuff, but this appeals to its own target audience that it is definitely properly targeting with the kind of music and the kind of tones and the kind of styles that they're working with here. They've centered everything here around the target that they're actually working towards. And that makes it, as a result, very, very good. You got even the font of the name itself is very stylized in its own way that matches everything else it's got going on. You got little seashells on the UI. Look at this. This is all amazing. This is fantastic stuff. And I haven't even looked at the price tag yet, and I'm already convinced this is something I'd be interested in trying out. And then you see it's only like $6. This is $6. You compare that price to Aloe and Cal, this is like $20 and didn't interest me at all from the trailer. This is a no-brainer after I just looked at that, you know? If I'm comparing this compared to that, which would you rather get? If you're looking at both these pages, you'd obviously rather go with this. Now, keep in mind though, Crystal Gameworks, I think, is a fairly big visual novel company, so they do have the money to get all the marketing stuff themselves, which, you know, probably might have been the main reason why this didn't have too much marketing stuff going on, was because they didn't really have enough money for proper marketing for this, which is unfortunate because this, you spent 5 years on it, this could have really been something, especially in the furry community, because I know a lot of the furry communities, they have a lot of money to put towards their kind of niche market, because there's not a lot of people that are making a lot of furry content that they enjoy. So if you're making a game that works in that niche and you properly market it, you can make a ton more money. But now, because they didn't have enough money to properly market it, it's probably not going to make a lot as a result. Probably after the 5 years, you might lose money as a result. I don't really know. I don't know how much the guy spent on it, but now let's look at one last example trailer, and this is another bad one. So, okay. Legend of Everything. This is the kind of shit we see on the Anime Night streams. So this is a game that doesn't exactly know its brand. This is a game that's kind of this is a game that's kind of just shoving stuff all around the place. And this is it doesn't really know what it's trying to do or who it's trying to target itself towards. It's just, oh boy. At least they're trying to make the trailer interesting. This is, at least they're trying to do their trailer. So I'll give them props for that. But the story itself and the assets and stuff, the whole like vibe it's just giving off a whole vibe of we don't really know who to sell this game to, so we're just gonna shove a bunch of stuff in and see if anyone wants it. So, yeah. What is reality? So it's supposed to be isekai, fantasy, sci-fi, adventure thing, which, I mean, yeah, it had those in it, but I don't know, it just kind of felt like it was just stuff. And obviously the presentation of it is important too. The trailer itself, they might have put the effort in for it, but the trailer itself isn't giving me the greatest impression that they know what's going on enough to sell it towards me. This feels like they don't even really know how to market this. And it's a shame because they might have worked really, really hard on the story and might have done really, really well with getting all of the assets that they've used to create this kind of story that they're trying to make. But if the trailer comes off in any way as just low quality or not really knowing what's going on, if like I'm watching this and I don't really know exactly what kind of story I'm getting into from the start, then I don't really know if I'd get into it. This is just kind of stuff. This is a whole bunch of stuff. And yeah, when I read the description afterwards, I know now, okay, it's a science fiction fantasy adventure. A scientist from our world goes into another world with fantasy and monsters and stuff. Okay, we got an isekai RPG visual novel game going on. That's pretty interesting. But the actual trailer itself didn't really, in my opinion, make it feel like that was what was going on. It just felt like it was showing us stuff, and showing us it all in ways that didn't really feel coherent and feel like it was all meshed together. It felt like it was all just kind of thrown to the wall to see what would stick. But hey, you gotta give credit where credit is due. Look at this. You see this? They made some graphic material. They made some graphic designs and put them right here in the description. Let's see, there's probably more. Yeah, you got some more character stuff. This is stuff they probably also could have put onto Twitter. So good for them. Hey, this might still sell though. While the trailer might not interest me, it still is a trailer that's more interesting than a lot of other visual novels. So this might actually sell than some other visual novels. Like say one that somebody has spent 5 years making. This might actually sell more than that. If you put the effort in to make a full-fledged trailer, a lot of the times, that's how it can turn out. I think the second video is some gameplay. So like this is them having the gameplay trailer, but that's fine for them to do because their very first video on the page was the actual trailer. If they want to have a regular gameplay trailer of an interesting scene, which this is because it opens with her with a gun, so that's immediately a very interesting scene, and she shoots the gun, okay? This is immediately a very interesting scene to show off with the gameplay. So you see what I mean? Even if you're doing the gameplay scene, you can make it an interesting gameplay scene with the visual novel. Hey there, Editor Borg here again. This was originally going to be one whole video, but when I was editing it, it turned out to be about an hour and a half long, so I decided to split into 3 videos. This is the second part that covered making the marketing materials, specifically all the graphics, store pages, and trailers. The last part that's going to be coming up is going to talk specifically about your social media presence, so keep an eye out for that because it's really, really important. I hope you've learned a lot from this. I put a lot of work into making it, and I learned quite a bit myself doing research for this. And I want to give a huge shout out to my friend Kennedy. Her YouTube channel is Redbarred. She has been a major help in making this because of her marketing expertise. I put a link to her stuff in the description below. Go check it out. She makes really great anime content. You won't regret it. Anyways, that's all for now. If you want to make sure you see the next part of this series, make sure you subscribe and do the bell thing for the channel, however that works with YouTube now. Do all the weird bell stuff, and I will talk to you all later.